All righty. Welcome, folks. A good Chodesh to everybody. Rosh Chodesh. First day Rosh Chodesh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Mishahakon Baruch.
Amen. Time.
Okay. We move forward in the Maimer, Ata Tetzava. Remind you, this is the last Maimer that the Rebbe gave out before his stroke. So to speak, it's, the one that all the teachings carry us forward as we come to 31 years since Gimel Tammuz, the day that the Rebbe physically left this world. That the Shama, the spirit, is ever present, even more than ever. Proof is in everybody that's here right now that did not see the Rebbe in their lifetime, if I'm not mistaken. And you're here. Okay, so we connected the idea of Kassis Lamor being crushed, that brings out the luminary from within, and with the Raya Mehemna, the faithful shepherd. Because Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, who's the faithful shepherd, it brought an internalizing of the core of the soul of the individual. That in a time of exile, when there's a darkness in the world, that you can then, through that crushing experience, it'll be the revelation, the main revelation of the essence of the soul at that time, and it will express itself in self-sacrifice. As we saw in the days of Mordechai, who was the Moses of his generation, in the story of Purim, and the crushing experience of exile, of darkness, that led to a great self-sacrifice of the people. So this idea that the faith, the Jewish faith, is right. What we're saying really is that Jewish faith leads you to self-sacrifice. Right. Like when the Frierdiker Rebbe said this Hasidic discourse himself, was Purim cut to 1927, right before he got arrested. There were spies, Russian, Soviet, communist spies at the Fabringen, Jews, came from Hasidic stock. What was going on in Soviet Russia then, it was like, and he continued his work, unabashed, like not succumbing to anything. Complete, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what the word is. So this we're talking about real faith leads to real sacrifice. Yeah. So where does this sacrifice mainly come from? Of course, it comes from the soul, but what element of the soul? Ready to sacrifice. It mainly comes from the essence of the soul. What it mean? We spoke about faith that comes from perceiving godliness, right? Perceiving. Sec. So faith comes also from perceiving godliness, from the soul. The soul above, as we explained, perceives God, godliness, at least, right? Godliness, right? Nonetheless, the faith that comes from there is coming because of something, right? Meaning, it sees, perceives godliness, Göttlichkeit. Um, in other words, it's not essential. It, it's not part and parcel of the makeup of the soul. It's what the soul is perceiving. Therefore, it doesn't necessitate, for sure, self-sacrifice. In other words, there's me and what I perceive. So even if I perceive, seeing is believing, as the saying goes, so the soul perceives godliness, but it is not essential to the soul. It's something added. It's yeah, simply put, it's something added. There's the soul and it perceives, right? Which we get that. It's like me. Anything that I perceive is added to me, but it's not essential to me. Mm. Which is not the case when it comes to Jewish faith, in a manner that a person gives up uh, that person that the self-sacrifice person has because godliness is the essence of them. There's nothing you can deny then, right? I can deny what I see. Might be hard, but I can deny it. But I can't deny what I am. So if I am godliness, right? Um, I can't deny that, and therefore I'll sacrifice because of that, most definitely so. Because again, you can deny something outside of you, but can't deny yourself. I hope that's clear. So accordingly, we can explain that Moshe, the faithful shepherd, Moses, who was the faithful shepherd, who fed faith, right? That's what we're talking about. The faithful shepherd, our Rebbe, is now feeding us faith through his teachings, right? So this is not just Moses that does it, but it is the faithful shepherds of every generation the extension of Moshe in every generation, as the Zohar calls it, that they strengthen the Jewish faith, that the Jewish people should stand, be ready to sacrifice in the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs, right? In the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs. Yeah, that's what the sacrifice is. Sacrifice is that, like in the times of Soviet Russia, where they wanted to wipe out God, wanted to wipe out any type of um, any religion, but especially Judaism, especially the previous Rebbe, who they imprisoned, originally had a death sentence upon him. Then 3 years of labor in the Gulag, and then he's released from prison. So and he stood strong for Torah mitzvahs, not on his own Torah mitzvahs, but for Torah mitzvahs for every single Jew. That's why he was ultimately in prison, because he wouldn't let up in making sure that that Jewish children were studying Torah, that there was a mikveh, that there was, especially for Jewish children, to make sure that next generation stands strong. Now, seemingly, Moshe Rabbeinu, who feeds faith, as we've explained, right? He feeds to the Jewish people the awareness of God, that through this, their faith becomes internalized, right? Similar to what we're doing now. In the learning that we're doing, in the teachings of the Rebbe, he's feeding us faith, that the faith we have should be internalized, meaning it shouldn't be something internalized in two ways, right? One is that it is internalized that we perceive godliness, and even more deeply, we, our godliness, are connected to godliness, essentially so. That we're connected to godliness, essentially so. Right? Now, that's what Moses gave. Because in his generation, he just brought that the faith should be internalized. Right? Internalized means that there's an experience of it inwardly in mind and heart in that connection. But the faithful shepherds of every generation thereafter, they brought something more, actually, and that is that the faith that the Jew has should be in a manner of self-sacrifice. That we're ready to sacrifice for Torah mitzvahs. In other words, I just give you an idea what it means self-sacrifice today. Parents sending their kids to Jewish schools, yeshivas, it's very expensive. It's very expensive. You can send to public school and it costs nothing. right? So it's a sacrifice to send to Jewish school. They can pay, you know, especially if they're large families. I have kids that are paying $40,000 plus, even more, for tuition for their kids. More, $50,000, $60,000 in tuition for their kids. That's a real sacrifice, right? As a result, you're not going on vacation necessarily. You're not having certain things in your life as a result of it. But that's self-sacrifice for Torah mitzvahs, that your kids have a proper education. That's just one example of today. Okay? Now, so accordingly, that Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, he gives it that the awareness of God should be internalized, that they had nothing to sacrifice in a sense, because they got manna from heaven. They were taken care of in the desert. I mean, the only sacrifice maybe is not to start up, if you will. But in all other generations, there was some form of sacrifice, right? So the main thing of the faithful shepherd is to feed. What we explain is to feed faith itself. That the faith itself shouldn't be only in a revealed way, meaning like your soul seeing godliness, but rather it should be because it's the essence of who you are is godliness. And this that Moshe, he drew the faith in an internalized way, right? To have an awareness, a grasp of godliness was a result of feeding faith itself. Right? Feeding faith itself, that it became internalized, to have an awareness that through the revealing the connection, the essential connection that the soul has. So accordingly, we can say that the generations that needed to have self-sacrifice, in fact, right? So the shepherd of the generation was strengthened, right? The extension of Moshe of every generation, who strengthened the Jewish faith, that it should express itself in its outcome would be self-sacrifice. And in that way, it revealed itself. More so the faithful shepherd in the fact that it wasn't just awareness of godliness, but it led to an actual self-sacrifice. So there means the following generations gave more, did more as a result for the generation than Moses did. Because the drawing down of this faith that comes from the essence of the soul, right, is mainly going to express itself in not an awareness of godliness, but actually self-sacrifice in actuality for godliness. So the point that we came out over here is that through our the faithful shepherd feeding faith is more than just an awareness of our faith, of our connection, but it actually leads that we act upon it in a way that that we sacrifice for that faith. That's true faith. All right, more to come. We'll see you soon. It's Rosh Chodesh, so Chumash Rashi will probably be closer to It'd be like 10 to 9 or 9 o'clock, between 10 to 9, 9 o'clock.